But let's get real. Being critical of Israel, the country, has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic. Suck it in, drink it up, get over it, buttercup. We have the right to call out the country of Israel for numerous reasons, which I'm going to explain here as I move on. Hey, welcome to another edition of Unbelievable Reality Podcast. I am Roy Arthur, and wow, do we have a lot to cover today. So I hope your attention span is up to it. And I hope you'll stick with me through the course of this podcast, because there's some things that I'd like to cover that I think are really pressing and we need to be aware of and actually trying to find ways to be actionable. First of all, I'm going to touch a topic here that nobody wants to talk about. And that topic is Israel. That's right. I am going to call out the country of Israel. And now, before you get started on the fact that I'm anti-Semitic and all that, I don't give a fuck. Okay? This isn't about Judaism. Okay? Get clear. This isn't about Judaism, the practice of Jewish worship, of their ideology. Once again, another monotheistic religion that is apocalyptic in nature, which I'll go deeper into in the podcast. But let's get real. Being critical of Israel, the country, has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic. Suck it in, drink it up, get over it, buttercup. We have the right to call out the country of Israel for numerous reasons, which I'm going to explain here as I move on. First, a couple of little literary references. As always, I like to start off with a couple books to read on the subject I'm exploring that might enlighten you. Now, if you're a member of the Minion Party, you won't be able to read these books because you only have 6th grade reading capabilities, and therefore you'll get bored quickly and not be able to understand anything. Skip over it and go back to Fox News. For the rest of you that have half a fucking brain out there, here's a couple things to ponder. 2 books that I've really enjoyed, not really, but I found most interesting. The first one is a book by Michael Schur. I have referenced this in previous podcasts. It's called Marching to Hell. And what this really is, it's America and Islam after Iraq. This was written in 2011, so it's a little bit dated because it should be after Iraq and Afghanistan. But it's not. One of the things that Michael goes into in great detail, though, is our absolute idiocy in our unilateral, unblinking support of the state, the nation state of Israel, and how that has brought us into conflict continually and repeatedly since the formation of the state of Israel in 1948. After World War II. So let's do a little history lesson following this. The second one I really think you ought to take a look at. This is called Rise and Kill First. This is the history of Israel's assassinations throughout its 80 years of existence of a country, as a country. The numerous assassinations of political political opponents, Islamic figures, heads of state, etc. Since day one, unfortunately, and with good reason, I will admit, from 1948, let's get real. Israel was first of all formed as a nation to give the Jews a homeland. That's why. And it was formed out of collective guilt over the aftermath of World War II and the genocide of the Jewish people. Okay, that was real. It really happened, and 8 million Jews were liquidated by the Nazis during World War II. Here's the sad, sick part about history that most people don't realize. The Allies were aware of what was happening to the Jews from the very beginning of World War II, because it began in 1938 on a night that is seared into the Jewish collective memory called Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass in Germany. That began the expulsion and extermination of the Jewish people, not only in Germany, but in every other conquered country during the Nazi campaign. The Allies knew from day one what was going on, and they looked the other way. Why in history, we will never be able to understand. Maybe it's because of the long-standing, centuries-old hatred of Jews by the Christians, who always blamed the Jews for what? Oh right, contributing to the death of Christ. Which would explain the pogroms, the mass murder of Jews throughout history. This has gone on. If you do look into history, you'll realize the Jews have been persecuted people for 2,000 years since the advent of Christianity. Okay? The Old Testament was only included in the current version, and there isn't a current version of the Bible. The most recent is the King James Edition, which is complete nonsensical bullshit that only radical Christians actually believe. Anybody with any kind of intellect whatsoever reads the Bible for about a half an hour and says this is the most insane piece of literature ever foisted on humanity. Second only to the Torah, and third behind Islam and the Quran. Yeah, that means I just probably got myself in the crosshairs of the Islamic Republic. Numerous ones. Going back to this was all brought up for me though because of the absurd comments made by Idiot Orange, Agent Orange, standing next to Netanyahu with a permanent smirk attached to his face when Donald Trump said we were going to take over Gaza and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Never mind the 2 million Palestinians that are desperately trying to figure out how to rebuild a country devastated beyond imagination by the Israelis. Do not get me wrong here. What Hamas did on October 6th, a date that will live in infamy in the Israeli psyche for eons, was horrific, appalling, and just beyond imagination. And yet, the slaughter, and let's be honest, the slaughter of over 50,000 conservative estimates of Palestinians, 40% which are women and children, and the complete leveling, decimation of a country is not equal to the act of October 6th. To call it overkill would be a simplification. This is wrong, horrific, and genocidal. And don't be fooled by the Israeli propaganda. This was a deliberate attempt to eradicate a people and to seize more territory. Israel has behaved like an empire since its inception. Its constant need to grab more land, from the Golan Heights to the borders of Syria to pieces of Egypt, Jordan, on and on. Israel has grown exponentially year by year through conquest and violent means. And why is the United States so desperately enthralled to Israel? Well, my best guess is it's a collective conscious remembrance of guilt. The Israelis have portrayed themselves as victims for 80 years. And yes, they were. But they're not victims anymore. They have become what they despise, which is what empire does. And it's horrific and appalling. And the reason why we continue to support them, $200 billion in weapons were given to Israel over the course of the last year and a half. And before, those American weapons were used to level Gaza. Those were American weapons. Those weren't Israeli weapons. They don't fly Israeli aircraft or shoot Israeli missiles. They shoot ours. Here's a news flash for everybody. Islam is now growing to every corner of the world. The Islamic religion. There are 2 billion Islamic adherents. They outnumber Christians 4 to 1. And they blame us, and rightfully so. And so it begs the question, because when Trump came out and said something so stupid as to inflame the entire Islamic Islamic world, sorry, gotta keep my mind straight here, to inflame the entire Islamic world by just casually saying, we're gonna take over Gaza. Do you have any idea of what the implications of that really are? The great American Satan. That is how we're viewed by the Islamic world. And why wouldn't we be? How many crusades have we waged, the United States of America, in our brief little timeline history, our little pencil-thin history, in the history of man? The greatest empire ever? Oh, really? $36 trillion in debt empire? You wonder why? You wonder why we are subject to terrorist attack? It's because that's how we're seen. And specifically, we're seen that way for our unilateral, unblinking, unwavering support of Israel. There was a senator that said just 2 days ago that Israel is our most important ally. What a fucking joke. That's a laugh. Really? More important than England, France, all of NATO? They're our most important ally? Why? Why? Is it because of the goods and services they export to us? No. Foods? No. Oil? Natural gas? No. They have none of those things. People? No. What does our quote-unquote most important ally actually benefit the United States? What do we get from Israel? Other than a lot of money for our arms industry. That's fucking it, folks. Get real. That's it. That's all we get. Okay? Israel is far and away our biggest ally liability. They are our biggest liability in the world. And yet we blindly support them. And do you know why we blindly support them? Well, let me tell you why. Israel has the most powerful lobbying group in the United States. Israel spends more money. That means pays our politicians directly into their pockets. More money than any other lobbying group in the United States. More money than oil and gas. more money than the arms industry, more money than the pharmaceutical industry, more money than the health industry combined. Why do we blindly allow them to do what they do? Because they pay us. And they don't pay you and me, the average citizen. We suffer the consequences of this bought, blind allegiance. And when the next terrorist attack happens on U.S. soil, we're only going to have one place to look. And the fact that Donald Trump just did what he did is a massive slap in the face to when our supposed best ally in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, comes out and unilaterally shuts down this proposal in no uncertain terms as absolute lunacy, then you might want to fucking listen. And the idea of involuntarily deporting 2 million people from their homeland is genocide. And if you're under any confusion here, which some of you probably will be, why don't you go back to the history of the United States and the Native Americans who were displaced, whose land was stolen, whose people were murdered through warfare and biological warfare, i.e. smallpox, measles, whooping cough, you fucking name it. All European diseases voluntarily introduced to the native populations so we could steal their land. Israel isn't trying anything new. They're just copying the blueprint, the roadmap that the United States has followed since its inception, going all the way back to the first load of criminals that arrived in a boat in Plymouth. This is lunacy. And it's about time that somebody called out Israel for what it is. This is a Zionist, imperialistic, militant country. No ands, ifs, or buts. They are no benefit to our country at all. And Israel might want to look in the mirror and say, maybe if we quit killing Muslims, stealing their land, and murdering their children, we wouldn't be constantly in a state of conflict. Food for fucking thought, huh? Switching gears. I have been talking over and over and over again in my previous podcasts about Project 2025. The blueprint to turn the American government into a theocratic monarchy with Agent Orange as its useful idiot head. Well, the Republican Senate, and don't forget a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, when this government is a fascist, theocratic kingdom, who did it? Remember the name of every Republican senator that voted in Russell Voigt as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. The keys, literally, to the financial kingdom of the United States. The architect of Project 2025, I will paraphrase the quote from the beginning of his chapter in Project 2025, wherein he states that financial control should be taken from the House of Representatives, otherwise known as the People's House, and given unilaterally to the executive branch, i.e. the president, for him to have access to the financial means to implement his right-wing, racist, misogynistic, Christian agenda. And every Republican senator voted for his confirmation. Never forget that. Never. Moving on, our Health and Human Services are now in good hands with RFK Jr., the anti-vaxxer, baby bear burying in New York Central Park, lunatic with a brainworm who said he got through college by shooting up heroin. He's now in charge of Health and Human Services. Wow, what could fucking possibly go wrong? Along that route, let us talk real quickly about how we have not heard an update from the CDC, which is under a White House directive to not publish anything in regards to national health in the United States. We have not heard a word from them for 14 days. Well, that has been going on. The tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas has now spread to Ohio. Tuberculosis was under control until what? Oh right, the anti-vaxxer movement came into play. And guess what? Now it's on the rise. Tuberculosis has a 30% fatality rate. Oh, and by the way, that little pesky avian bird flu that's wiped out our entire poultry industry, which is why we're paying $10 for a dozen eggs, it continues unabated, unchecked, and undiscussed. The pandemic that is unfolding before our eyes that soon will begin our human population, this administration doesn't want to talk about. Wow, that's funny. Do you think it's because of what happened when they completely fucked up COVID? Crushed our economy, froze our country. We're so fucking inept. Agent Orange suggested we shoot up bleach. And now they don't want to talk about any potential health problems in the U.S. Why? Because that could derail their smooth road to a white Christian nationalist theocracy. Oh, and while the crickets are chirping, Elon Musk continues to run completely unchecked throughout our federal government, infiltrating and capturing the data of every citizen in this country. Not just Social Security, not just your home address, but your bank accounts too, motherfuckers. Sleep well tonight, knowing the richest man in the world that has no interest in you whatsoever other than how to steal your money now has the means and wherewithal to do it. And he's getting kicked open doors to access more. And be well tonight knowing that our national defense is in the competent hands of an alcoholic, woman-abusing, misogynistic, serial philanderer who's got no more clue about how to run our Defense Department than a Fox News host would. We're moving along wonderfully. And Pam Bondi, our new Attorney General, who's a rabid mega moron, is now going to run our Department of Justice. So expect no justice. None. They're busy on a witch hunt to go after everybody who even inferred at any time in the Department of Justice or FBI that Donald Trump did something wrong. When all he has done from the moment he first came down the golden escalator with something stuffed up his ass is rob and rip off the American people while he's not busy lying about every word that comes out of his mouth. Yeah. Project 2025 in full sway, our government radically moving towards a white Christian nationalist theocracy with a useful idiot at the top to be our fascist dictator. All we can hope for is that all these stupid fuckers cancel each other out, which they most likely will, but the damage will be done. And our elected officials have now shown unequivocally, without a doubt, they're all bought and paid for. And there's no way around it. A radical reform of our national government is called for. And what is called for is a rollback of Citizens United from 2011. A ban, an outright ban on all lobbying from all fronts. an outright ban on super PACs and political contribution, a ban on all stock market investment the minute you take an oath of office. You must divest yourself of all investments. All, and no, you can't hide them in a shell company or a trust. You must immediately give them up the minute you're elected to serve the people. Because this is supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, by the people. And that has been forgotten. These are my observations, facts, and opinions. If you don't like them, fucking don't watch. If you do, comment and subscribe. Also follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify. I'm Roy Arthur, and this is more of our unbelievable reality. And ladies and gentlemen, the sooner we wake up to it, the less unbelievable it will be.